Okay, this lesson is on percent shortcuts. Percent shortcuts are a way to mentally find the percent of a number, to do it in your head or with very little math work at all. I think these are really fun, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure that you have your notes and you're filling them out as we go through the video. Pause when necessary. Okay, finding 10%. We've already learned how we can use percent bar models to find percent of a number. So if we want to find 10% of 400, here's the percent bar model. We would divide it into 10 equal parts to represent 10% each. Divide the 400 also into 10 equal parts. So each part would get 40, or each 10% would get 40. So 10% of 400 equals 40. Okay, 10%, finding 10% of a number is easy. We just divide it into 10 equal pieces. So we want to find 10% of 700. Remember, this fraction bar means to divide. We just divide 700 by 10 and we get 70. You could also do the long division. What is 10% of 85? Well, let's divide. 10 goes into 85 8 times, which is 80. I have a 5 remainder. But now that we're in middle school, we don't deal with remainders. Instead, we can add decimals and a 0. And 10 goes into 55 times, which is 50 with a 0 remainder. So 10% of 85 is 8 5/10, or 8.5. So do you see a shortcut for finding 10% of a number? To go from 400 to 40, what did we do? We lost a place value, didn't we? We had 3 place values. Now we have 2. To go from 700 to 70, what happens? We lost a place value, right? And what about from 80 to 8.5? The decimal got moved. It got moved to the left 1 place value. Is that what's happening here? Here's 400. Move the decimal point 1 place to the left and we get 40. 700, if we move the decimal point 1 place to the left, we get 70. So that's the shortcut. And we've actually kind of talked about this already. When you're dividing by 10, you can mentally, or powers of 10, you can mentally move the decimal point however many places as there are zeros. Well, it's the same thing here. 10% is the same as dividing by 10, so we just move the decimal point 1 place to the left. So let's try it. What is 10% of 89? Here's our invisible decimal. Move it 1 place to the left and we get 8.9. Now, this has a dollar sign in front of it, so we're talking about money. So we need to write it in dollars and cents formats. So we need to put the 0 here. $8.90. What is 5% of 60? Well, I can mentally find 10% by moving the decimal over 1 place. So 10% is $6, but we want 5%. Well, take a look here. Isn't 5% half of 10%? If I take my 10% and divide it by 2, I get 5%. So I can do the same thing with the money. If I take my $6 and divide it by 2, I get $3. So 5% of 60 is going to be $3. What about 5% of 25? Well, let's start with the 10%. I can move the decimal over 1 place to the left. 10% is going to be 2.5, or if it is easier to work with, which for me, it's easier for me to do it mentally, 2.50. 5% is going to be half of 10%. So what's of half of 2.5 or 2.50? 1.25. What about 45% of 40? Well, 10% I can easily find. That's going to be 4 because I moved the percent or the decimal over 1 place to the left. So it's $4. 5% is going to be half of that, which is $2. So I could multiply this 10% 4 times to make 40%, which would give me 16, and then add my $2 to get a total of $18. Or you could say, hey, 50% of $40 is $20. So to that, I will subtract 5%. And the 5% is $2. Subtract it, you get $18 because 50% minus 5% is 45%. Things to think about, right? There is no one correct answer. The correct answer is the $18 that you get at the end, but there's no one correct way of finding 45%. All right, let's talk about finding 1%. What is 1% of 400? Well, it's the same thing as finding 10%, but instead of dividing by 10, you divide by 100. Because 1% is 1 out of 100. If we had our model here, and we've already broken it up into tenths, if we were to take each 10% and divide it up into ones, then 40 divided by 10 would be 4. So 1% would equal 4. If I divide 700 by 100, we get 7. If I want to divide 85 by 100, I would need to add a decimal and a 0. 100 goes in there 8 times, which would be 800. Subtract 50 remainder, add another 0, bring it down. And 100 goes into 500 5 times, which is 500, 0 remainder. So this becomes 0.85, 85 hundredths. So how is the decimal being moved this time? To go from 400 to 4, it's being moved 1 place, 2 places to the left. To go from 700 to 7, 1, 2 places to the left. And to go from 85 to 0.85, it's going 1, 2 places to the left. So that's the shortcut trick for finding 1%. You just move that decimal point 2 places to the left. Okay, let's try it. What's 1% of $89? All right, here's the invisible decimal point. Move it 1, 2 places to the left, and it becomes 89 cents. What's 1% of $15.80? Move it 1, 2 places to the left, and it becomes 0.1580. Now, we are dealing with money. So when you're dealing with money, you have to round to the nearest cent, which is in the hundreds place. So this 8 is going to tell the 5 to round up. So it actually becomes 16 cents. What is 3% of 25? Well, I can easily find 1%, move the decimal 2 places to the left, and I get 0.25. And if I want 3%, I just multiply 0.25 by 3, and I get 0.75. What about finding 17% of 40? Well, 1% equals what? 40 cents. So I could either do 17 times the 40 cents, or I could go back to what we learned about 10%. I could take 10%, divide it by 2 to make 5%, and then add 2%, and that would give me 17%. So what is 10% of $40? It's 4, because you just move it 1 place. 5% would be half of 10%, which would be 2. And if 1% is 40 cents, then 2% would be 80 cents. Add them together, 4 plus 6 plus 80 cents would be $6.80. If you took the 17 times 40, you'd get the same thing. 0, 28, 6, and we would need 2 decimal places, $6.80. Same thing. Okay, so let's try this. We want to find 15% of $80, or it doesn't have a dollar sign, so 15% of 80. Okay, these are our percent benchmarks. These are the mental ones that you should be able to do in your head. What is 100% of 80? The whole number is 80. 100% of 80 is 80. What is 50%? Well, if I take my 100% and I divide it by 2, I can go from 100 to 50 by dividing by 2. 80 divided by 2 is going to give us 40. How can I go from 50% to 25%? The easiest way is to divide by 2. Some of you might think about dividing the 100% by 4, and you could do that. If I know the 50% amount, I can go to 50% to 25% by dividing by 2. 40 divided by 2 is 20. 10%, that's easy. We just move the decimal point over one place to the left and you get 8. 5%, I can go from 10 to 5% by dividing by 2. So what is 8 divided by 2? It's 4. And then 1%, I take my 80, move the decimal point 2 places to the left, and I get 0 and 8/10. So how can we find 15%? Take a combination of these, whichever combination you want, to make 15%. An easy way would be to take the 10% plus the 5%. So I could do 10% plus 5%, and that's going to give me 15%. So the 10 plus the 5 would be 8 plus 4, which is going to be 12. Or, change my color here, I could do 25% minus 10%, and that'll give me 15%. So 25% is 20, minus the 10% is 8, equals 12. You get the same answers, don't you? Can you think of any other ways? Sure, lots of ways. You could go find 1%, and you can multiply it by 15, so you could do 15 times 1%, which is the same as saying 15 times 8/10, and that'll give you 12. Okay, so it's whatever combination works best for you, whichever combination you see that pops into your head. It doesn't matter the combination, you can see we get 12 as our answer every single time. Okay, now you're ready for your independent practice.